We need to be together on this as we move forward. So along with my co-hosts, I feel like this gathering is what our dear friend Richard Elias would want us to be doing right this moment, staying active, believing in each other, and staying in touch. So please feel free, starting now at any time, to put in questions. There's a little chat box down below. Put your questions in. Elvira has already received questions from the email, so we have those questions as well. And after we have some opening remarks by both candidates, then Elvira will direct your questions to the candidates, and either can answer both or one or whatever. So with that, and in the spirit of Richard watching over us in his blessed way, let's start off with the first candidate. We'll start with Adelita Grijalva.
Well, good evening, and thank you all. Thank you to Molly and Robin and all of the co-hosts and Katja. I'm so very appreciative of you taking time. I think that I'm so glad that Molly mentioned the fact that we have a local election too, and a lot of us that are on the down ballot really do need the support and the help and attention. I think that the national conversation is taking front and center, and I completely understand why, but we do have a lot of issues here locally that I'm glad that to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about why I'm running and a little bit more about me. So the why I'm running is because our dear friend Richard Elias passed away, and we had 7 days before petitions were due, and we were able to collect together over 1,600 petition signatures in a very short period of time. And I think a lot of that was people just wanting to be able to do something to honor Richard. And I'm very appreciative of the support of Emily and Luz Elias, and really just in being very encouraging about getting involved. The biggest issue that I think that we need to continue to address is being a very strong voice. District 5 has a reputation of being a strong voice for our environment and for our employees and labor. And I want to continue on in that very strong tradition in District 5. So I am a Tucson native. I was born and raised actually in District 5. So I was doing the math, and like, I've never left the District 5 area. I have moved away from my parents' house, but I love this. I love District 5. So District 5 encompasses Saguaro National Park, both tribal nations with the Ho'ono'odom and Pasquayaqui, and where I have lived my entire life right here in South and West Tucson. And so one of the things that I think is very unique about this district is how diverse it is. So you go from one side of town to the far other side, and it is like you're in a whole other different city, except that the people are all, their issues are all equally important. And right now, what we're really focused on is pandemic and recovery, both for the health of our community and our economic recovery, that I think has to be number one on the forefront. And all of the other people that I've heard talking that are running in this election, fortunately, their concern is the same. How we get there is where we differ. And so I feel like having a very strong plan on how to make sure that our community is healthy and feels safe enough to go out into the community. I am on the governing board for Tucson Unified School District. We are 220 square miles. Nearly all of it is in District 5, or a huge portion of it is in District 5. And I have serving 18 years, and I still have 2 years of my term left, and I plan on continuing that. And so it's very interesting how much the work that we're doing is a dovetail for what we're doing right now and talking about our health of our community. In the district, we're debating whether we should reopen schools and what we need in order to be comfortable doing that. Those are the same things I think our community needs as well. We need to have a very strong contact tracing. We need to have a strong testing facilities, targeting tests where they need to go, where our hotspots are, and letting people know that that's a concern. There you go. We have been up. I'm good. Yeah. We have been very involved, I think, in trying to create this space where people can really talk about their concerns. And all of the concerns that I've heard continue to be about, one side of town or the other. People are not taking this pandemic seriously. People are saying the pandemic is over. Well, when you have the leader of our nation saying the pandemic is over, it makes it a little hard for the rest of us in our local municipalities to continue to push our communities to stay safe. I also think that a very critical piece of keeping our community safe and moving past this pandemic is ensuring that we are working closely with all the municipalities that are in Pima County. That means the city of Tucson, Oro Valley, Marana. We're not talking to each other. And so all of us have resources. Every government has some resources to address the concerns with COVID, but because we're not working together, we're really not utilizing and making every dollar stretch. So I think that's going to be very important. I am a mom of 3 children. My daughter Adelina is in 8th grade, my son Raulito is in 6th grade, and my son Joaquin is in 4th grade. And so I want to make sure that we protect this beautiful place for not just my children, but for generations to come. And that is one of the driving forces for why I'm running. And I look forward to having more questions and conversations about what your priorities are and ensuring that that is woven into what I take as my charge when I, fingers crossed, am elected. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Adelita. And now Steve Diamond, District 4.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the efforts of the co-hosts and of everyone who's on this call with us. I'm Steve Diamond. I think I'm less well known to the community compared to Adelita, so I will take a few moments to introduce myself, tell you a little bit about my background, who I am. But first, I say I'm running to be the first Democrat ever to represent District 4 on the Board of Supervisors. In fact, I'm the only Democrat since 1996 to run for this seat, and this district has never been represented by a Democrat. It's been Republican ever since it was formed in 1972. The district comprises Green Valley, Vail, well, a little portion of the south end of Sahuarita, Vail and Corona de Tucson on the east side of Tucson, and then a large portion of the east side of Tucson itself, basically the part that is east of Pantano and southeast of Catalina Highway. But it's a very complicated boundary. I won't try to get into all the details, but that's it. So it's the opposite half, the opposite side of the county from District 5. And so I'm delighted to hear Adelita mention diversity, because one of the themes of my campaign is certainly the inclusiveness that is necessary because of the incredible diversity, and the strength of this community, I believe, is its diversity. But let me go back and tell you a little bit about me. I was born and raised in New York City, moved to Tucson in 1971, and have lived in Pima County ever since. Professionally, my background is in information technology. And they say that you need a lot of business sense in order to help run the county, help govern the county. And the county is like a large business operation. And I would compare my business background to anyone's, because my role in information technology for 35 years was primarily as a project manager, software implementation specialist, which meant that I had to be able to go into large companies, small companies, medium-sized companies, and understand them from the top down, from the bottom up, from the outside in, from the inside out, every detail of how they worked and how they fit together. So I don't find the size and complexity of Pima County government daunting in any way compared to what I had to do and what I did do successfully during my IT career. So why am I running? I'm running because I first became very interested in county government in early 2018 when the Operation Stone Garden funding question really blew up in the community, and the Indivisible group that I was on the steering committee of became involved with a coalition of community groups opposing the Operation Stone Garden grant. And we became very active in that. And I started attending the Board of Supervisors meetings, and I never stopped. I got fascinated with it, and I formed relationships. I spoke at a lot of the meetings, and I formed relationships with the Democrats on the board, including the late Richard Elias, who was really my champion and greatest supporter. I dedicate this campaign to him entirely, because without his encouragement, I don't think I would or could possibly be doing this. So, and by the way, from that Indivisible group, I was on the steering committee. 2 other candidates for county offices this year emerged from that same little steering committee of Indivisible Southern Arizona. One is Gabriela Cazares Kelly, who is undoubtedly going to be our next Pima County recorder. And the other is Kristen Randall, running for constable seat. So that was turns out, I hope, to be a very influential beginning as an Indivisible chapter. And the move from being an activist to being a politician has been in some ways strange for me to make, but I think it's the right way to go, to have a bigger voice for what I want to advocate for in this community. And I don't have time to talk about the details of that now, but I will some in my closing statement, and I hope to as we respond to the questions from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. Adelita, you are such good candidates. We are so lucky. So now I think we are ready. Elvira, we'll open up now to your questions and then some dialogue back and forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Cool. So I'll be relaying questions that you all sent when you RSVP to this event. Generally, a lot of them have different ideas, or they're about one specific topic. So, I'll start with climate change. So a lot of questions came in about climate change and how to address it locally. And so I'm going to read one. So how do you plan to work on the county level with the city of Tucson and the recent declaration of a climate emergency? What ideas do you both bring to transition county operations to carbon neutral, and by what time? I will be putting the question in the chat so that you could both refer back to it. And Steve, would you like to go first?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, I think that there is a climate change emergency, and that the county can certainly cooperate with the city. The county already has programs in place to conserve water, to convert some of its facilities and operations to sustainable energy use. I think a lot more can be done in that regard. And I think preserving the environment through protection is another very important thing. For instance, regarding opposing the Rosemont Mine project, I will mention that in this regard that my opponent, the incumbent Republican Steve Christie, has repeatedly said that he doesn't agree with the science of human-caused climate change, doesn't agree with the science that says Rosemont Mine would pollute the environment for centuries, and basically doesn't agree with science at all. So I'm running to bring science-based, fact-based, reality-based governance back to this seat on the Board of Supervisors. I don't think we can possibly ever reach correct policy decisions and decisions on the issues if we don't begin with the reality, begin with the facts of the situation.
Thank you. I'll just take the other end and basically say that, or that after Steve, I think that it's important for us to really focus our energies on working with our municipalities to make sure that we're dovetailing what they're doing. I think that creating a state of emergency in our community was a really good move by the city, and it's something that I hope that we can do as well at the county level, because we have to work together. The city of Tucson cannot become carbon neutral by any date without the county working in tandem with them. I think it's important for us to look at the infrastructure and whether we have the kinds of bike paths and busing routes that would really encourage families to use other options other than driving their own vehicles. I think that's a really big piece of it. Ensuring that we have that is important, because I can drive from my home to where I work downtown, a 10-minute drive. But if I were to try to take a bike path, there is no safe way for me to do that from my home to work, which would really be a relatively easy ride. Taking a bus to get to downtown would take me about an hour and a half. And so I think that we have to make sure that there's safe ways for us to have ourselves, our children, commute without adding to pollutants that are in our environment. But I also think working with the city and planting more, making sure that we have more natural responses and assistance to clean our air is important. Making sure that we create those caps on other people that are polluting in our environment. I think that all of those factors are going to play into the kinds of ordinances that we have, the kinds of policies that we bring forward. And I feel it's important that we have a board that is willing to do that work together. But I think it's a very doable for us to work together to get it done.
Thank you both so much for answering. And a lot of questions were about climate change and specifically about the Rosemont mine, which I know Steve mentioned. But I just want to ask again, the question came up a lot specifically about the Rosemont mine. So what are your opinions on the mine, and how will you make sure that, it won't happen? Adelita, you can go first.
Yeah.
This time.
So actually, interestingly enough, in the primary, I had a lot of money that was poured into this specific race and this area from miners and organizations that are promoting mining. So I think that really made it very clear what my position was, and the fact that they didn't want somebody that was automatically out of the gate opposed to it. I am the only person that has been in this election run for the seat that really fought hard to get the endorsement of the Sierra Club, because I think it's important. And it's not because there was any advantage financially for me. I was trying to get organizations that endorse me that align with my values. And I want to bring people together that are a part of that mentality, and how we can work with the other 4 members of the Board of Supervisors to make sure that we protect, we do not allow Rosemont to move forward, and we protect our beautiful natural resources.
And by the way, I have the Sierra Club endorsement as well, I'm very happy to say. And the fact is that the county can't really do anything very directly to stop the Rosemont mine from going forward, because it's in the hands of the federal regulators and now in the federal courts. But what the county can do is to lobby as strongly as possible. The county has submitted briefs to the federal courts that are considering the permits, and I think they've turned out to be influential. And I think we can continue to do as much lobbying as we possibly can, but there is no guarantee that as a county government, we could stop that project. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. It's privately held land, and it's in the hands of the federal courts as to whether or not it's going to be able to go forward. But I do believe the science, and I think that if it would be ruinous. It would be ruinous to the environment in the Santa Rita Mountains and to the aquifers that come from there that flow toward the city of Tucson and Vail. And I will do everything in my power to possibly stop it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. So another big topic that came up in the questions with the RSVPs was specifically on the topic of immigration. So Adelita, you can answer this question first since Steve did the other one first. So what is your position on holding the Border Patrol accountable for excessive use force in Pima County?
I think actually Steve is next because I answered.
Did you answer?
You're right. I answered the
Thank you, Adelita.
Yeah.
Steve, you can go first.
Okay, I'd be happy to go first. It seems to me there are larger issues also that we could talk about in terms of Border Patrol, but I think the Border Patrol absolutely should be held accountable for excessive use of force, for excessive militarization. And again, though, similar to what I just said about the Rosemont Mine project, these things are largely in the hands of the federal government. And I really hope, fingers crossed, for a Democratic sweep in the federal elections so that we can have more sane governance coming out of Washington, D.C. In the meantime, again, we can lobby, we can use our positions on the Board of Supervisors as community leaders to make as much noise as possible against the what the Border Patrol is doing in terms of excessive force, and to also make sure that our own county sheriff's department is not contributing to the problem.
I completely agree. I think that what we need to do is ensure that our community, our representation, our law enforcement that is here is abiding with what our values are, which is, and it's something that we can do because in Tucson Unified, we did that with TPD and the sheriff's departments that were coming onto our campuses. They don't ask about immigration status on our campus. And actually we've had commitments from both the sheriff and the chief for both TPD and the sheriff's department that they would not be asking about immigration status because that is not something that is a core value of ours. And so as far as we can get into having those protections for our community is important because I've been there when families have been torn apart. And I run a juvenile diversion program, and I've worked with hundreds of thousands of families that come through that program, and to hear the stories of their parents, moms and dads and tios being ripped apart, and it's just devastating for our community. And so we want to do everything we can to protect the people that are contributing members here. And so I would be a very strong voice in ensuring that we do not have immigration enforcement happening by at least the Pima County Sheriff's Department.
Thank you both. So I'm going to direct y'all to a question sent from Dorset in the chat. So what is your position on growth and the spread of large tracts of multiple housing on desert lands, increasing the demand for water and disrupting natural desert lands? And this one will go to Adelita first.
Yeah, so I actually am a big fan of investment and reinvestment in our established neighborhoods and communities, because I think one of the reasons why some of our bonds and overrides have not passed is because the people that live in our communities, we don't see the benefit of some of those funds. And so I would like to direct our efforts to making sure that our infrastructure in our established neighborhoods are ready to go, and they're not. And so I think that that's important. And I'm not in favor of spreading to, pristine areas that are untouched in our community in order to build homes out there. Part of the charge of being on the governing board for Tucson Unified is really looking at we have a lot of closed schools right in the hearts of neighborhoods. And what can we do to rehab those facilities and provide low-income housing to community members who need that? What are things that we're doing creatively? Because we have large plots of land, even that are owned by Pima County, that we haven't done enough with. And so I would rather look to those spaces, to rehab those spaces, to work with builders and contractors to do those kinds of investments as opposed to spreading out. I know that smart growth is going to be really critical because Tucson doesn't want to be Phoenix, and I don't want us to either. I mean, I think it's a big push for us to take care of the environment that we have, support the people that are choosing to live here in Tucson like me. There's a lot of natives that have lived here their entire lives, and there's reasons for it. And so I just want to make sure that when we're looking at the kinds of community projects, that we're doing more neighborhood reinvestment and less growth and spread into other areas.
I agree with that completely, and I'll add this, that there already is a plan that the county has published and revised for the use of land throughout the county, and I haven't myself, did my picture get cut off? What happened? Sorry, apparently my camera stopped, and I will try to start it again. There we are. Sorry. And I think that plan, I haven't studied it in a great deal of detail, and I think as far as it goes, it is probably a pretty good plan, but in observing what the board does, they routinely override provisions of the existing plan by granting more leeway to developers to do more development in outlying areas. And I think that has to stop. I think if you have a plan, you ought to stick to the plan and look at the plan, sure, review it and revise it as needed, but don't routinely override it just because some developer is asking to develop a new tract of land.
Yeah, thank you both for answering that question. So there's a question from Molly McCassin. So this will be for Steve first. So can you share your thoughts on requiring universal background checks at fairgrounds gun shows as well as over Pima County, as all of Pima County?
I believe that there should be universal background checks for gun sales in Pima County, no matter where they occur. I know there have been complications in trying to get that changed for the gun shows on the fairgrounds, and I am convinced that there are creative solutions that we can come up with that will enforce that at the gun shows and elsewhere where those policies are not being followed. I think that is very important, that gun sales be properly regulated.
I completely agree. I also think that having a county attorney, a different county attorney in that office is going to provide a lot more support to the Pima County Board of Supervisors. I think our current county attorney, her opinion was that there was no way for us to regulate that, no way for us as a board to enforce that. And I've actually had a conversation with our incoming county attorney, Laura Conover, who has a different legal opinion. And so I think that's going to be a really huge benefit for us at the county, because then we can enforce some of these policies that we know as a county we've already passed. There shouldn't be any area in the county that is exempt from the laws of Pima County.
Thank you both. So this one will be for you first, Adelita. So in your opinion, what is the most issue facing Pima? Whoa. What is the most pressing issue facing the Pima County Board of Supervisors at this time?
The biggest issue is recovery, both for our health, the community, our health as a community, and also our economic recovery from the pandemic. I think we have to really think differently about what our new normal is going to look like. We're not going to be able to go back to the way things were before. And that won't be for some time. So even if we do have a vaccine that is successful in the very in the near future, we've had a lot of promises, but most scientists and epidemiologists say that a really solid vaccine takes about 2 years to develop. And so I think that we're going to have to figure out a way for us to work through this. Look at the different jobs that are available now. I mean, you know, if you would have told me 5 months or 6 months ago that we would be having a meet and greet on Zoom, I would say, no, I've never done that before. So we're all doing a lot of things that we've never done before. Having school completely online, nothing that we've ever done before. And so there are ways for us to improve how we run business as a community and as the county. I think that's going to be something that is very critical, because we want to make sure that, you know, there's going to be something coming. We're going to have health concerns that are going to continue to come. The new word for the day that I saw was twindemic. So we have a really hard strain of flu, and also we're still dealing with COVID-19. And so these are going to be things that are going to come up, and we have to make sure that our community is safe first and foremost before we can get back to whatever the new normal is going to look like with work, school, and getting out.
I agree completely that that is the number one issue: recovery from the community's health and safety, and recovery of the community's economy. And I have a few thoughts about the economy, which I think are somewhat creative solutions. You know, the taxpayers and the voters have shown in recent years that they're not very interested in seeing the tax rates go up in Pima County, and I don't blame them, and in particular because of the recession caused by the pandemic. This would not be a good time to be tinkering with tax rates, but there are ways that we can expand the county's economy without going for sprawling growth, and also without raising tax rates. We can raise revenues by investing more of the county's buying power back into the local economy, like redirecting some of the county's own spending to more local companies, lobbying other large institutional spenders to spend more money locally and build up the local economy that way. Because, you know, for every dollar spent in Pima County, it circulates throughout the community several times. And that's why I'm in favor of economic development projects similar to the controversial Worldview project, for instance, which is structured so that the county taxpayers get their money back just from the lease payments that the company makes on the facility that we help them build. Plus, they bring in 100 or more jobs paying over $90,000 a year each, and their profits stay right here in the community. So to me, those are the kinds of things that we need to be doing that can help grow the local economy, and therefore the county's revenues, so that we can invest in some of these important programs that we've been talking about.
Awesome. Thank you both for sharing. So this question comes from Barbara. It's been the hottest year on record. How can we move to legislate protections for all workers who are exposed to extreme heat in their work? And this will be Steve first.
You know, I don't know. And whenever I don't know something, my inclination is to reach for knowledge by talking to experts, by talking to subject matter experts in the community, and by listening to a diverse array of voices from the community. As for in this particular question, it would be a diverse array of voices talking about what protections are needed, what protections would be useful for workers in various different situations, and then talking to legislative and administrative experts about what kinds of solutions can be found. But from my own knowledge, I'm not an expert in in those areas. So I would want to reach a decision and policies by a broad discussion where many voices are included.
I think that sorry, motorcycle going by. I think that it's important for us to talk to the people who are doing the work, the all of the employees that are there doing the work. I think it's important for us to hear from them. So if you look at some of the construction projects that are happening, some of them that are happening at night are probably a real benefit as far as kind of the effects of heat on those employees. And so I think it's important for us to be talking to our unions and our workers to find, and our laborers to find out what it is that they need, and then work the policies that way. One of the things that I have found the most beneficial in serving on the governing board for TUSD is when we're talking about something that's going to affect teachers, talk to the teachers. When we're talking about something that's going to affect our employees as far as changing standards for custodial services, you talk to AFSCME and CWA. Those are the representatives that are representing those employees, and I think they can also help bring people together. To start with the organizations, and then you very quickly will hear from all of the employees that are talking about their health concerns as well.
Awesome. So this question is specifically for you, Adelita. So how do you see yourself continuing the legacy of Supervisor Richard Elias in the seat?
So it's been really interesting because people ask me all the time, what's the difference between you and Richard? And I always say, he's a lot nicer than I am. He really is. He's just a very nice person. He will talk to you even if you disagree. I will do my best to be open to whoever wants to talk to me, but I've seen him sit with somebody who has a complete different opinion about a certain issue, and they'll sit there and talk for an hour. I'm like, I'm going to work really hard, I promise. But I think one of the things that I mentioned early on is really bringing a lot of different people to the table. That was something that was very clear after his passing, when you saw the emotional reaction from every member on the Board of Supervisors, including those that have a completely different political ideology. I think that is important, because while it might not have helped him in every vote, we do know that the Board of Supervisors has been a 3-2 majority for a very long time. But I think that it did ease some of those conversations with trying to get people to collaborate and compromise. And that's going to be something that's going to be really critical, because if we think about the organizations that have had some influence over at least talking to me with my campaign, it's interesting because you have the Sierra Club on one side and you have the Tucson Realtors on the other. Both organizations have endorsed me, and when I'm looking at those questionnaires and answering those questions, what they want is very similar. They want to make sure that people are not losing their homes and being evicted. How are we going to protect that? How are we going to protect people's jobs, making sure that they have what they need, but still protecting our environment and making sure that employees are being taken care of? That last question was something that realtors and contractors also had a concern with, but that the unions and representatives of those employees that are working in those conditions also have the same concern. So I find it really interesting when you peel away some of the kind of the bad blood from before and really start talking about where we can all find some agreement and commonalities. I think that that's important. I will always be a very strong voice for things that I believe that we all value, but I also am always willing to hear from people who don't agree with me, and I think that there's validity in people's opinions, whether I agree with them or not. And I promise I will take a page from Richard and listen more, even if I don't think that I'm going to be budged on the issue. I think it's important for us to be open. And so that is going to be really important, a really strong voice for our environment. And just, he attended a lot of events, which I think that we have in common. So I'll never fill his shoes, and I don't pretend that I ever will, but I will work very hard to make sure that I am a strong voice and advocate as well. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. And so, Steve, there was questions specifically for you, and now learning that you would be the first Democrat to win that seat, it makes a lot of sense why these questions came. So this one's for you. So Steve, what are you doing to encourage voters in your district that you are the guy to vote for, and how will you beat the Republican machine?
Well, the way I'm encouraging voters is to emphasize the contrast between me and the incumbent, Mr. Christie. And I think of the voters that I talk to, a lot of them are really sick and tired of his science denial, which I mentioned earlier. And for him to say that he doesn't believe the science of A, B, C, D, whatever particular issue it might be, where does he get he's not a scientist, where does he get the expertise? So I think a lot of voters agree with me on that question. They don't know where he gets off raising himself above that either. And the other issue that I talk about where I find a lot of agreement is inclusiveness. As Adelita was just saying, listening to a diversity of voices, whether they agree with me or not. And I think the strength of our community is in its diversity, and that the strength of our community can only be realized when we really support each other and lift each other up. And the voters have been very receptive to that kind of message. Plus, I have I'm not going to read you the numbers now, but I have some numbers here that indicate, based on some of the early voting, based on other factors, including the primary vote, by the way, where I very nearly beat both Republicans in the primaries in August. And I think the Democratic enthusiasm this year is enormous. And anyone who says that I'm not able to win this race is whistling Dixie, as far as I'm concerned. A lot of people didn't think so a year ago when I first declared, but they're changing their minds now. And I think with Democratic enthusiasm and perhaps some lack of enthusiasm on the part of Republicans for their candidates, that I can win this. I can see that there could be 5 Democrats on the Board of Supervisors come 2021.
Yes, excitement. We're almost there. We're only 18 days away. So awesome. So I'll be passing it along next to Robin to follow up on the closing. Thank you.
Thank you for pointing out I was muted. Thank you everyone for coming. It has been great to see all of you here, and also to hear from Steve and Adelita. So for the past number of months, the federal focus has been sucking all of the energy out of this election cycle and sucking all the life out of a lot of us. So I want to thank Adelita and Steve for coming and pointing out how important the down ballot races are, particularly the Pima County Board of Supervisors. So some of the priorities we've heard about are the climate change emergency, background checks, COVID, thank you, economic development, and they both need your support. So Adelita and Steve are both looking for volunteers in the next 2 weeks, which is hard to believe it's going to be that soon. Adelita needs people to bundle materials and do safe lit drops, which a number of us on this call have been doing on Saturdays and Sundays. And Steve is looking for people to help with phone banking, and he's doing that 9 to 7 every day of the week. If you want to find out more, you can go to adelitaforsupervisor.com or votestevediamond.com. But the other thing we've done is set up a joint account so that you can make a donation to this account and it will be divided between Adelita and Steve. And so if you can't volunteer and or you want to do more and make a donation, there's a link in your invitation to secure.actblue.com/donate/AG for Adelita Grijalva, SD for Steve Diamond. So thank you again for coming. And my mother used to go to hear this preacher speak, and she always ended up with passing around a hat. She spoke on the beach, on the water, and said, I don't want to hear the clinking of coins. I want to hear the rustling of paper. So that's what we're looking for. I hope you give as much as you can. And thank you again for coming. And I'm going to turn this over to.
Well, Rob, I'll pick up here just for a sec. You've really said our thanks to the candidates so beautifully. We wish them much force and victory. Now we're going to have some closing comments, and then we're gone. I'm so sorry for those of you who submitted questions and didn't get them answered. I'm pretty sure the candidates will both be looking at those questions, and maybe they can get back to you on email or something. I don't want to commit to them, but I think they will try to. So let's hear from the candidates, and we'll closing remarks. We'll start with Steve. And
Molly, can I say something really quickly?
Absolutely.
Okay. I just want to say, I have talked to so many people who've said, oh, what do you want? I've already voted. I mean, there's nothing I can do. And I think this conversation has proved that there's so much that all of us can do. And I said, I'm not giving anymore. I'm done. Steve, I just gave you money. And that's like, I am the quota. I don't know what the expression is in English, but I am the quota. I'm like the hard, no, but it's not a lot, but I think we all have to dig, guys. This is the moment, and we have to talk to everyone we know. We have so much to do here in Pima County.
We do.
Thank you both for standing up. I just wrote your mama, Adelita, and said, I'm so proud of you.
So she's
Richard
channeling.
was dear to all of us, and he's touching you, Steve, and he's like pulling you along, baby.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for channeling this wonderful Richard Elias, both of you candidates. So we'll go with Steve. Final remarks. Thank you all for being here, and may the force be with us.
I
Thanks.
actually think it's, how do you want to go, Steve? You want to wrap up?
Yeah, I thought since you started, I was gonna start this time, but it's.
Oh, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yes,
Doesn't
go
matter.
ahead.
That's swell.
Yep.
So thanks to everyone. Thank you, Katya. Thank you for the donation and for mentioning that. And let me reinforce that and say, I'll say exactly what my campaign will do with some additional money coming in these last couple of weeks, because I've been working with limited resources all along. I'm not a multimillionaire like Steve Christie, and I haven't the vast fundraising network either. But I have some very targeted digital advertising, and what I will do if I can raise another 1,000 or 2 in the next week or so is one final mailing to the voters that I've identified as the swing voters, because I think that it's going to be the swing voters, the independents, mostly registered independents, who are going to decide this race. Democratic turnout will be important. As I mentioned, I have numbers, which I won't read now either. But if I can get one more mailing of postcards out to the swing voters who I think will make the difference, that could make the difference to the race, win or lose. So I would very much appreciate your donations at this point in time. And to sum up, otherwise, I've been working as hard as I know how to get this done, because I really believe in this community. I believe in the future of this community, and I think that so much more could be happening here. That the tendency in county government has been toward sort of business as usual, let things go on as they have been. And I think we need to shake things up a bit and to revisit some of the business as usual, some of the planning. I'm so delighted that Laura Conover is going to be our new county attorney, because that is going to be a major change all by itself. And I look forward to the opportunity to work with her in reform and change of the criminal justice system. And there is so much more that can be done. So thank you all for your support. And I appreciate every bit of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Adelita.
Yes, thank you very much. I want to thank Dorset and Molly and Robin and Katja for all getting your friends and getting the word out. I really am very appreciative. I think that this was a good conversation to have. And I did note that Lee wanted to know some answers to questions, and I would say yes, Medicare for all. And yes, I do think that we need to reimagine what our law enforcement looks like in Pima County and the Tucson. And so I would ideally like to see 3 people go to a 911 call that is not, you know, a fire or something like that. Someone that has substance abuse prevention background, mental health background, and then law enforcement. Not every solution to a call to 911 requires someone showing up with a gun. So I just wanted to make sure that I addressed that. Please check in Adelita for supervisor.com. We are doing phone banking. We're doing no contact lit drops all over District 5. And so you can also support wonderful candidates that like Andres Cano and Gabby Casares-Kelly, all of the TUSD candidates that we're supporting, 208, 481. So when you come to get a bundle, it's a lot of information going out at the same time. And so we would really appreciate your support and time. That would be very helpful. And so thank you all for the time that you took today and this evening. And we look forward to seeing you. So thank you so much.
Wonderful. I think we're right down to the minute. We have such fine candidates here and so much to celebrate in Pima County when we win this election. We will move forward on things that have been frozen in this county for a number of years, that Richard could not move because he couldn't necessarily round up even some of the Democrats at times. But now I believe we will. And so thanks to the force of all of you out there. Co-hosts, anything else?
No.
Anybody? No? Okay.
A big thank you for your courage for running. Thank you.
Thank you. Buenas noches. Muchas gracias.